Speaksies.
Hey, we have an awesome show today. We have Kristen Carney on the show. She is a comedian, a writer. She has co-hosted Loveline and The Adam Carolla Show, but she's also a dating and banter coach. So it's a fascinating conversation. But first, we're going to get into a very interesting phrase, which is cancel culture. You may have heard of it. Steve and I will get into that. And then we talked to Kristen about it as well. She's got some pretty interesting thoughts. You're going to get a They Walk Among Us segment. That's our conspiracy segment with Steve bringing the conspiracy. And just a hint, it wrecked some of our childhoods. And then we talk about OK Boomer before getting into the conversation with Kristen. It's a really fun show, and we're going to start it right now.
One of the things I love about Richmond, Virginia is the climate. And, we have, I'd say, definitely have a long summer.
Mm-hmm.
Spring and fall, I think, are extended. It's, we're southern in geography, not as much temperament anymore, but, in geography. So, but we're not as far as like deep south where you get like that summer that just hurts the entire summer. But we get, we're recording this in late fall, and I was able to wear shorts today. So I actually have my Chubby's brand, skies out, thighs out. I live by that. Temperature wise, skies out, thighs out. Cloud wise, pretty overcast, a little bit rainy today. So I wanted to, I started this day, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to see Scott. I want to have a good energy. So I'm wearing like a canary yellow shirt and a green bandana. And by the way, I actually do wear bandanas. I mean, I do it up for when we record together. This is pretty much what I look like most times. And some variants of this. So it's a bright outfit. It's a bit aggressive.
It looks like something from a Sprite commercial because it
does
the exact colors
in
of
a good
Sprite.
way. But I mean, it's assertive, which was not necessarily a bad thing if I'm coming to see you. But when I had a customer service situation at Dunkin' today, it was a little bit odd. So the backstory of this is I get up this morning. A couple of times a week I'm going to get a Dunkin', go to Dunkin', get coffee, get a donut, start my day.
Right.
Get the kid when the kid likes powdered donut, and I am somebody who's worked in the food service industry before. So I recognize and respect what people do and try not to be that guy.
Sure.
So I get a powdered donut. I come home and give it to the kid.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to show you, this is the powdered donut that I purchased.
There's not much powder
There's
on
not
that
much
donut.
powder on there. So I thought for a second, part of me was like, look, that's a Breaks kid. And my daughter's awesome. She was not like, I can't believe it. Wasn't anything like that. She's like, thank you. I appreciate it. It is what it is. Actually said that. And then I had a moment of like, she's my daughter. I got to take care of her. I need to set an example, one, that you don't, you pay for something, you get what you want. But also, too, that, I'm not going to let her, realizing I'm set in a seat of being a bad father doesn't take care of her.
And let me just say this. I think that we need to make it really clear because it could sound like you're training up a Karen, but please put this picture somewhere, whether on social media or maybe the cover of the podcast, because there's I don't even know if I'd call it a dusting. It's a cake donut.
It looks like it was in a box with a powdered donut.
That's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah. So I went up there. Also, of course, want to stay in Dunkin's good graces. Walked in, showed him the donut. They handed me another one. Lady wasn't entirely thrilled with the whole process, but no pushback or no grief. Part of it might have been that I look like Tweety Bird cosplay because I'm wearing this outfit as I walked in. I also decided I'm not going to change my clothes for that. So they did, it was good customer service. And I did get a chance to look at the rest of the powdered donuts. I think this might be part of the reason the young lady I encountered wasn't necessarily thrilled, was whoever was powdering the donuts today.
Yeah.
When they said time to make the donuts, I don't know what happened, but the powdered donuts were, there should be some air quotes as I say that. So I got one that was better, but definitely not a traditional powdered donut. But again, everyone has a bad day.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Origin of Speaksies. My name is Scott. I'm here with my friend Steve. Today, I thought would be good to do, since we are, like you said, we're nearing the end of 2020, to look back at some words and phrases that have emerged this year. Sort of a look back, and it's been a crappy year by all accounts, except for, I think we've mentioned a couple good things that have happened with Ina Garten just being awesome. Tesla just released a tequila. That was kind of cool. I don't know if you've seen the bottle. It looks really cool.
No. And I could see that being a way to kind of subconsciously push automated cars, too. Because what's the, another benefit if you're getting driven around?
Oh, okay. Yes, I got you. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, there have been a couple good things. I went to see, okay, what are the big things of 2020? Because sometimes things don't show up on my radar, and I think this is new, and instead it's from like 2015.
Right.
So I started researching. I found an article on Good Housekeeping about new teen slang, and it was terrifying.
Yeah.
I clicked away. It had stuff like brown sugar and blueberries.
Yeah.
Which apparently is slang for drugs.
Okay.
And I
don't think that's real.
I don't think it's real. It felt like something that like Jack Webb from Dragnet would say.
Or your mom would see on Quincy and sit you down. It's like, we need to talk about your friends if they ask you about brown sugar and blueberries.
And that's the thing is, those articles are always out there.
Yeah.
And they're always either intentionally funny or wrong, or they're just late.
Yeah.
As MC Surge would say, you're late. So we're not going to get into that stuff. We're not going to talk about goofballs.
Can I say one good thing that came out of 2020?
Please.
I would just like to call out that you and I, and by you and I mean me, when we did an episode very early in the year about bees' knees, where we also learned some frightening facts about ducks, thank you, New York Post, I, in a way, predicted 2020.
Remind me.
I will remind you. So we discussed one of the slang terms from the 1920s, kale, which listeners know as the devil's weed, was slang for money back then.
That's right.
It was a prominent 20s thing, and I pointed out we see how how that decade ended.
Right.
And pretty soon thereafterwards, people started munching on bats, and here we are today, armed with masks on our body somewhere.
So when I was looking at terms, the things I saw had a lot to do with COVID, like social distancing, the new normal. Yeah. Which that's not like that's been around, but it
gets recycled for every bad thing that happens. Is we now have to hear that.
I have to say one of the ones that I really dislike was essential workers because like nobody wins in that. I remember in March when you started hearing the term thrown around and there would be people that say, well, I'm an essential worker, so I have to,
Right.
And maybe that was the problem with the powdered donuts. That guy's not an essential worker, which I would disagree with. But if you're not labeled an essential worker, it's kind of like, wow, my life is nobody.
You're pretty much a barnacle on the rest of the civilization that us essential workers are driving.
Right. I don't know that many people that would actually admit to not being an essential worker. But the phrase I'm going to focus on in this episode is one that has come up a lot recently, and it's cancel culture.
Cancel culture.
So according to Merriam-Webster, to cancel someone, usually a celebrity or other well-known figure, means to stop giving support to that person. The act of canceling could entail boycotting an actor's movies, no longer reading or promoting a writer's work. The reason for cancellation can vary, but is usually due to the person in question having expressed an objectionable opinion or having conducted themselves in a way that is unacceptable, so that continuing to patronize that person's work leaves a bitter taste. Wikipedia just says it's a modern form of ostracism.
Yeah. And I think both of those definitions leave out, it kind of sounds like we're going to leave you alone. But, we've seen it as it's played out as more of an active, it's not just we're not going to buy this anymore, is we're going to get our virtual torches and pitchforks and come after you.
So, yes. And if you listen back to the Merriam-Webster definition, which I'm not going to go ahead and read again, but the most important part of that was the word boycotting. Okay. If you take that out, it's what you said, which is what cancel culture is not, which is just not patronizing that. Right. So, because when I first read that, I was like, that doesn't go far enough. But the part about boycotting is the part.
Right.
I like Wikipedia's very succinct definition better because it just says modern form of ostracism.
Right.
Ostracism is a word that describes cancel culture, I think. And it's a good word. It's kind of not used enough. When I read it, I was like, oh, that's what people are getting ostracized. And I like it too because it's a good word that it kind of covers everything. When you're ostracized, people aren't going to buy your stuff. People aren't going to think you're cool.
Right.
Yada, yada. So I think if you don't like something someone said or conduct, and you decide, if it's an actor not to watch their movies, that's
Right.
That's you. I'm assuming that you've never led an active boycott. You tell me if I'm wrong.
Right.
But have you had to like personally ever quote unquote cancel someone or stop patronizing them because of something they did or said?
There's been circumstances, and mostly it involves customer service. But what the difference is, if I go somewhere and I repeatedly receive poor customer service, I just don't go anymore. I go somewhere else. I think the difference between that and cancel culture is me going, you know what? Dunkin' didn't give me powdered donuts. Mm-hmm. Let's whip up the mob and go after them and take their livelihood and take their business, which I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think the threshold for that needs to be very high. Of when you start to mess with someone's livelihood,
right,
there needs to be a really good reason other than there wasn't enough powdered sugar on my unnecessary, hunk of calories.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now that you mentioned that, it makes me think of something that has just occurred to me, which is the Chick-fil-A thing. Mm-hmm. We talked about Chick-fil-A before.
Right.
If you don't want to go to Chick-fil-A because of their stance on, or I guess the owner's stance on like LGBT issues, or at least what it used to be. I don't know.
It's the dead owner's stance.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, he at one point held the same views that Barack Obama did before
traditional marriage.
Yeah, before something went over 51%, and then the scales fell from his eyes.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. We can probably get into on this show as well, which is that with the cancel culture, there's no statute of limitations on saying or doing something that could get you canceled. But I was thinking about Chick-fil-A, and I knew that there was a shift going on when a former employer of mine, we had a lot of different places to eat, and one of the places at work, believe it or not, was a Chick-fil-A.
Mm-hmm.
There were Starbucks, there were all sorts of places to eat. It's a big company. And during this controversy, the Chick-fil-A disappeared and was replaced with ostensibly they said they needed to go with a more healthy option.
Right.
It was eventually replaced with a burger chain. So, it was clearly because of this view, they got canceled. Now, like we talked about before, you're going to go back to Dunkin' Donuts and probably McDonald's every once in a while because the food hits a certain spot. And the same thing for Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A's done pretty well, but So, Steve, what about, though, like an entertainer or actor? I guess that is an entertainer. Have you ever had to say, I'm not watching this guy's movies anymore?
Not that I can think of. And part of the reason is I don't have time to go through everyone's thing. And I pretty much assume, frankly, that everyone in Hollywood's a degenerate. And just, to nitpick on what degeneracy throws me, or, that I no longer will accept. Mm-hmm. And I think also it comes into context too of, Roman Polanski is a criminal who lives outside the U.S. Maybe we'll bring this up later. I don't even want to bring up actually I'll say what he did.
Sure.
He left the country after he drugged and sodomized a 14-year-old girl in Jack Nicholson's hot tub.
Right.
That doesn't make the movie Chinatown a bad movie.
Right.
But it also doesn't, I think for me it's kind of going in the past. You don't blacklist stuff because of that. Now, should he continue to win Oscars? And, there for years at least was a kind of Hollywood, let's bring, who hasn't sodomized a 14-year-old at Jack Nicholson's house?
Right.
So maybe The Pianist is a really good movie, so maybe he should come back.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I answered your question. I think I would say no, but I think there comes there is a threshold for things of you don't go back in the past and blot things out. But
you're bringing up though. See, that's the thing though, that you're making the point that I wanted to make and that I agree with, which is that's pretty reprehensible. And I even have in my notes here, I pretty much assume everyone is sort of reprehensible a little bit in their own way.
Yeah.
AKA they're just a human.
Yeah.
And I try as best I can to separate the artist from the art when it comes to that stuff. But you're bringing an example of somebody that really did something bad. And even then you're like, well, it's still a good movie. It is what it is. Now, on the other hand, if he's banned from well, can't come back to America, obviously, but if the Oscars are like, we're not going to mention him, like, you're probably fine with that.
Yeah.
You have to really burn a lot of calories to be the judge, jury, and executioner for everybody and decide whether or not you deem them worthy of being quote unquote canceled or not.
And I think that's another facet of it that I'm sure you'll touch on is with cancel culture, there doesn't seem to be, it's like fundamentalism, it's like extreme religion, but missing the idea of forgiveness.
Yeah, let's talk about that now. I think that's something that, and we're going to try to keep it pretty light, but I think Steve and I both clearly have thoughts on this. I look at it as we're humans. We have human nature. Nobody's perfect, but we want to aspire to something. What is that thing you're going to aspire to? So is it religion? So, there's fanatical religious zealots. And then, when it comes to literal religions, and then there's either you call it wokeism or whatever. The thing is, cancel culture is on the rise big time. So a poll of American registered voters conducted in July of this year showed that 40% of respondents said they had withdrawn support from public figures and companies, including on social media, because they had done or said something objectionable or offensive, something they considered objectionable or offensive. 8% of respondents engaged in this often. That seems like a huge number. 40% say, yes, I've withdrawn support based on something someone said or conduct they said. I don't know how that strikes you, but I mean, I only have a couple examples of my whole life, but it seems to be happening more now.
That doesn't surprise me, but the difference for me is, you can unfollow someone on Twitter that shares a view you don't like. The difference to me is when you go beyond that and decide, let's get the mob together and we're going to attack this person because I disagree with this person's political view, or even if they said something that's inappropriate. Yeah. It's time to take their livelihood. And again, for me, that needs to be a very high threshold of if you're going to put a mob together, there needs to be a good reason. Well, actually, you shouldn't ever put a mob. I really don't think.
Yeah.
I can't think. Well, maybe we'll see as we go on. To me, I'm a big fan of opposing the mob, whether it's a mob of people I agree with or a mob of people I don't. I think the mob is a bad thing.
I agree. Not everyone agrees with that, though. I had a conversation with somebody that I really respect and said exactly what you just said, and they were like, I kind of disagree. Like, I think the mob, that's just democracy. And I'm like,
Well, it is democracy, but we don't live in a democracy.
Right.
We're coming out of political season, not to go political sciencey, but I am. We are a republic. We're a democratically elected republic, but we're not a democracy. We don't vote. You and I don't vote on individual laws. The mob, which is frankly us, doesn't do that. The founders put in a process to have people that represent us to kind of calm the passions and have a little bit more sense. And also when you add that with the checks and balances of our government.
Right. So here's a quick list of some celebrities canceled just in 2020. This is from a website called thethings.com. And I hadn't even heard of all these people, but they're all very famous. So here's a quick list just this year. Lana Del Rey, and she was canceled because her music doesn't empower women enough. Lea Michele from Glee.
Yes.
Apparently she was mean to other cast members. Jimmy Fallon, who did a Chris Rock impersonation, which had blackface, I guess, because he was dressed up as Chris Rock. Doja Cat, racism, which that one was actually kind of funny because she basically got canceled with a hashtag saying it was like Doja Cat is over. And then she had to explain that she's black. And the next day there was a trending tag of sorry, Doja Cat.
Okay.
So she was only canceled for about a day, which is another thing about cancel culture.
So it wasn't because she is called Doja Cat and has a song where she says repeatedly that I'm a cow.
That probably played into it.
Okay.
But it's the number one reason was racism. Vanessa Hudgens for not taking COVID seriously enough. J.K. Rowling, you probably read about that one. That was transphobia. Demi Lovato, this is great. Someone made a fake Demi Lovato account and said mean stuff about Selena Gomez, and she got canceled. Sebastian Stan from Gossip Girl. So I've never heard of this guy. He's pretty famous, but his girlfriend participated in Asian Night where people were dressed up as geishas.
Okay.
So he got canceled.
Okay.
And we've seen that where it doesn't even have to be you. If it's your spouse or girlfriend or you're associated, you get the stink on you, canceled. And then the biggest one of this year was probably Ellen.
Right.
And the Ellen thing, I will not really weigh in too much on because I don't care. I haven't watched anything with Ellen in a long time. But I also think people need to settle down. Like,
right.
I'm sure she's not the dancing person that you see on TV,
right.
but who cares?
But we also don't live in China.
Right.
If your boss is mean to you, you can get another job.
Right. And I mean, come on. You know, and again, I'm not the one to decry, I guess, sexism all the time, but there is a thing where women that are mean we don't like that. I mean, David Letterman was a jerk.
Right.
By all accounts, to like staff and stuff. I don't remember
right.
him getting canceled. Maybe he did.
Well, but I think if he had been active,
you're right,
during this year,
as I was saying,
some other hashtag Me Too things that came out about him, maybe not as much.
So those are celebrities getting canceled, but regular people get canceled too. Normal people like you and me.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you may remember Megyn Kelly was canceled and fired from her show on NBC due to something related to blackface. And a graphic designer went to a party dressed as Megyn Kelly in, quote, ironic blackface and was subsequently fired from her job. So you can't, like, that's the thing too with cancel culture is you can be like, what was it? Papa John's guy who was saying, well, hey, the KFC owner used to use the N-word, but he said the N-word.
Right.
And he was done. Like Papa John's guy done.
But not calling someone the N-word.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Stating a word out loud in context of something.
It'd be one, like, and again, I'm not defending Papa John. Let me be clear about this. I don't know the facts really. It's just, I do know enough to know that it doesn't have to be an overt, it doesn't have to be the director of Rosemary's Baby doing what he did. It can be you are somehow associated or say something that you just shouldn't say, even if you're not calling somebody that thing. So anyway, I think we get the point. But getting canceled itself is really nothing new. It's more the terminology, right? And it's also become much more prevalent due to the internet. So let's talk about the origin of the term cancel culture. So the term itself is pretty new, and it's a form of something called call-out culture.
Okay.
And call-out culture was used more to describe safetyism, quote unquote, on college campuses, which is what Jonathan Haidt called it. And it's something when I read that, I said, oh, that makes total sense, because I remember it in like the late 90s, early 2000s. I noticed it in social situations, even in work, where something would be said that maybe was like newly learned that this was not PC to say.
Correct.
And people would all kind of look around.
Right.
And you'd go, shouldn't say that. The thing though is the person calling out probably just used that word yesterday and doesn't really think there's anything wrong with the word or the whatever that's being talked about, but feels the need to call out the other person due to political correctness. And I very much remember that dynamic when it first started.
And it seemed to kind of snowball from there. And it sounds like call out culture is the logical next step. Is you've called out people, now we're gonna cancel them.
Well, what happened was social media and especially Twitter. So you can, it started on college campuses mainly, and then that sort of spread into the larger, demographic. But once the internet came along, it wasn't just in a classroom setting, somebody says something that's not PC, and one of the other students trying to sort of like impress the professor goes, we don't say that because da-da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
And then that sort of spread. Well, now it's on the internet, and everyone's scared to say anything because, boom, the mob. So to bring back the mob thing.
Right.
So according to Insider.com, again, which I'd never heard of Insider.com, but they had a lot of good stuff on this.
Yeah.
The term cancel culture has roots in early 2010 Tumblr blogs, which I never had a Tumblr, and I feel okay with that.
I think I actually did.
Did you?
I had after MySpace. I missed that wave, but every social media thing after that, I've probably had at one point or another a Tumblr blog. And to be clear, from what I generally know about Tumblr, it was just regurgitated pictures from Facebook, not any proto OnlyFans or anything like that with me.
there was a Tumblr blog called Your Fave is Problematic, where, according to Insider.com, fandoms would discuss why their favorite stars were imperfect, which sounds like, God, how miserable do you have to be?
What an awful life you have to decide that you're going to spend time finding out people that aren't perfect, which, spoiler alert, is every single person that's ever existed.
Yeah. Gosh, I can't even imagine how miserable people that are sitting there just talking about why their favorite stars are problematic. But Twitter is the big place where this has happened. Yeah. I mean, really, cancel culture comes from Twitter. The Me Too movement was a part of this as well. And the Me Too thing is complicated, and we won't need to really even talk too much about it. There's a part of the Me Too thing that I actually really liked. Like, I like the accountability thing. I like the fact that real scumbags kind of got called out. I don't necessarily love that's the thing though. You don't want to play judge and jury about it. So sometimes you have people that you're like your Harvey Weinsteins and Bill Cosby's, who it's pretty much they were bad people. Right. But then you have other ones that maybe aren't as bad. But then even me saying that, I could get canceled.
Again, it comes back to the mob. No one is defending Harvey Weinstein, but there are also people caught. He was guilty, but there are also people that after that started, that if an accusation was put to you, that there was really nothing to do at that point. That you had been marked that way. And I think one of the biggest detriments of Twitter is its ability to marshal a mob. And I think I'll talk about this a little bit more. It's a mob that's not, it makes that mob sound a lot louder than it actually really is. It's a megaphone for the fringes.
Yes, it amplifies those voices. And the other thing is you can, I mean, if you look sometimes at the raw numbers of things that get, liked or, retweeted, they're really big, but then you also kind of like look at it in comparison to the population of the United States. Not that big. So it seems really big. It's also very simple to just click a like. So the word, but why the word cancel? So the best sort of explanation that I could find of this had to do with the rise of online subscriptions. So to things like Netflix and pretty much everything we have now, you get like the 7-day free trial.
Yeah.
And you can literally cancel those things. So the idea of just quickly canceling something became more prevalent. And then it's not a far reach to then take that to people. And I also think the term boycott is not a cool term. That's something that a Karen or your mom or a boomer would do.
Right.
Cancel sounds much cooler. You're canceled. Boom.
Yeah.
And it also, let's not underestimate the alliteration, right? Cancel culture. You can't really say boycott culture when you refer to this. So another reason we use the word cancel is if you go back to, so Insider.com was trying to find when did this all start, and they go back to 2014. There's a guy named Miles McNutt. He's a TV critic and assistant professor at Old Dominion University here in Virginia. He tweeted in February of 2014, he was talking about cancellations of TV series, and he said, quote, "It's unfortunate how renew/cancel culture has made not renewed early read as canceled. Wait and see until the pilots come in." And I guess they reached out to him about that, and he said he didn't mean it in the way it means now. He didn't feel it was a legible phrase at the time, but he was talking about TV shows getting canceled. And that's actually a really close cousin to a personality or a public figure getting canceled. So that's another place that it came from. So it went from being used on Twitter less than 100 times prior to 2018 to really where it is now, which it's been used millions of times, literally. So according to Insider.com, Google Trends data indicates that there was, again, like no interest in this term cancel culture until the second half of 2008, early 2019. And it really boomed in July of 2019. There were a bunch of, like, as they put it, fleeting cancellations. So the ones where people are canceled one day and they're back, which included Taylor Swift, Kanye West, and Kevin Hart. Gosh, that feels like kind of that just happened, but that was late 2018.
Right.
And it just snowballed, as you said before, from there. I would just summarize and sort of end by saying I think it's really clear that you and I, like, we talked about this before we started, and we said, we're going to try not to like just sound bitter the whole time about this, but the feelings kind of came out. Listen, if you can get Barack Obama and Donald Trump to agree on something, that's pretty rare, and both of them have actually come out against cancel culture. I don't know anyone that would actually say I'm for cancel culture, because the term itself is viewed negatively. Right. So even somebody that's, I mean, I've seen defenses of cancel culture, but they won't call it that.
Or denials of cancel culture. That's is what I've also seen. Yeah.
My final thoughts on this are, I don't mind so much, I guess, the idea of like a public figure getting quote unquote canceled, kind of called out, even if it's something ridiculous, because it's just going to happen and you're in the public light. What I really don't like, and I think we should defend people when this happens, are just normal people that lose their jobs over things. Right. I mean, there are stories, and you can Google it, of people that get fired for things like, there was a construction worker, I think he was a construction worker and an electrician, but in California, who lost his job because his hand was out the window and it looked like he was making the OK sign is now like a white supremacist sign in some people's eyes. And he actually went through the whole process and got fired, even though that was the only thing. And the guy had no idea. And there are a lot of times like that. So I don't like that. And I also don't like people being afraid to speak or use actual data. And there's a guy named David Shore who put out some views based on data having to do with voting. And, there's been a bunch of these things, if you've paid attention, where people are just saying, hey, I'm noticing this. And a lot of times they're liberals, or they're on the side of PC, or they're maybe Democrats, or but they say something that's not in line with whatever woke narrative there is. Right. And they get fired. Yeah. There's the famous guy from Google. I can't think of his name, but he wrote the thing about women or whatever. But so I don't like that is what I come down to. But I don't really know what to do about it. It just kind of is what it is.
Well, I think what we, with all things, is you bring it into the light and, talk about things and push for openness and consistency. And I think, again, having a high threshold of what equals cancelization, I think, is very important. But I think also, too, is just say no to the mob. People need to stand up to the mob. The mob is not as big as you think it is. Right. And, there are times, I'm sure, on whatever side of the spectrum you sit, that you'll see your mob come up. It doesn't, and I think one of the things that's been really great about this last election that just happened is I think it was pretty obvious that people on the right and left agree that the mob isn't a good thing. There was a columnist that put it very well, that the fringes are fringy again. And I think that just speaking the truth when it comes to the mob, especially with cancel culture, is it's not a right or left thing. Stand up against the mob. Right. No one likes the mob, and the only way to fight it is for us to stand up against it.
I agree. So that's cancel culture. And now I believe, Steve, you've got They Walk Among Us. Conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy theories.
There's a secret society of the 5 wealthiest people in the world, known as the Pentaveret.
We know differently, and here's David Stern with the announcement.
First pick, select Patrick Ewing.
Who run everything in the world.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The Queen, the Vatican, the Gettys, the Rothschilds, and Colonel Sanders before he went tits up.
They walk among us.
So this is my first They Walk Among Us. Yeah. And I don't know if you mentioned this. I think you might have mentioned this in passing in the first They Walk Among Us about New Coke being in a conspiracy. Right. So that was something that was actually an event that I distinctly remember, and it awakened some things in me. Not as that sounds very odd. That sounds like normally with sexual awakening. Yeah. It wasn't that sort of awakening, but we will. You know what? No, I will give a little bit of a teaser that the term "daddy juice" will be used here shortly. So
I never want to hear that again. Well, after this segment, I don't ever want to hear about daddy juice. But I will say, Steve, I relate to you, and not to make it about me, but the awakening thing, I laughed not because it sounded weird. I laughed because I know exactly what you mean. It was a huge deal. People, I don't think kids today.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but things like the Cola Wars were like a huge deal. Like whether you were Team Pepsi or Team Coke was a huge deal. And so anyway, I can't wait to hear more about this. Because yes, I do remember when I was looking at, hey, we can do sort of darker ones or like we did the candy, the needles in the candy. And then there's fun ones like New Coke, and you kind of perked up. So
yeah, I did. And also, so people don't think it's too fun, I will find a way to tie cancel culture into it. So this actually was fortuitous for a few ways. Okay. So the conspiracy regarding New Coke is summarized by Snopes.com as thus. Coca-Cola halted production of its flagship beverage in 1985 and introduced New Coke. You're shaking your head. Oh,
I'm shaking my head. I'm sorry. Okay. Because I'm pissed about them canceling.
I thought it was like, well, am I f***ing it up that bad?
No. I kind of want to keep this because I want people to know that's how disgusted I am about when they canceled. Because do you remember that for a while you had to say when you were ordering Coke, I'll have a classic Coke.
Yeah, Coca-Cola Classic. Yeah. Again, the Cola Wars were real. So the conspiracy is pretty much that Coca-Cola halted production of its main Coke, introduced New Coke in its place, and it was a sham. It was intended to fail. It was a marketing ploy to combat declining market share and rekindle interest in the original drink.
I mean, that seems like a long way to go about it, but it also kind of makes sense because a whole generation of people like myself and you
still remember it. So we'll go through. I think that kind of gets to what the best conspiracy theories are, and best, and not meaning that they're true, but ones that resonate, that have just a little bit of a kernel of truth that you go, yeah, but.
And it's a fun one to tell people. I had not heard about it, and now that I have, I'm like, oh, I could see that. Like, I want to tell more people about this one. Did you know?
So going back on April 23rd, 1985, New Coke was debuted by Coca-Cola. On July 10th, 1985, Coca-Cola announced it would be bringing back Coca-Cola Classic and selling it alongside New Coke. So
say those dates again.
Sure.
What was the
April 23rd, 1985, and then there's April. Well, that's late April. So May, June, July 10th, 1985. Coke reverses itself.
Well, wait a minute. Maybe this was a conspiracy.
Well, let's see. Well, I'm glad I've got you rooted. So back to Snopes. The legend has arisen that New Coke was nothing more than a throwaway product created as a part of a greater plan. People refuse to believe any decision that colossally disastrous, but also ultimately colossally fortuitous, is all from Snopes, could have been the mere result of human miscalculation. But again, this is a debunking of conspiracy theories.
I just thought of this. It reminds me of remember a few years ago when they said Twinkies were being discontinued?
Right.
What was that about? Because then they came back too, right?
Maybe they learned a lesson from New Coke.
Could be.
So, continuing from Snopes, the early 1980s found Coke teetering on the edge of losing the Cola war to Pepsi. The previous 15 years saw Coca-Cola's market share remain flat while Pepsi's continued to climb. Pepsi was winning the supermarkets, and it was only Coke's greater availability in restricted markets, such as soda vending machines and fast food outlets, that was keeping the numbers ahead of Pepsi's. So back to my personal remembrance of this again, the Cola Wars were real. I remember Pepsi was very aggressive in their advertisements. One, they used to do something called the Pepsi Challenge. There's a blind taste test of people tasting Pepsi and liking it. But another thing was that they had a campaign called the Pepsi Generation.
Yes.
And had a Thriller era Michael Jackson, along with the Jackson 5, as a spokesperson. And again, we're going to date ourselves, kids these days. It is hard to explain how big Michael Jackson was in the early to mid 80s of just to get him.
I don't have anything that big.
I don't even know who would be comparable.
No, that's what I'm saying. There's not.
I know we talk about him a lot, sometimes facetiously, but maybe Kanye West. I'm trying to think of I don't even think he doesn't count it because my parents don't know who Kanye West is.
Yeah,
my parents would know who Michael Jackson is.
And he was the last artist that I can remember, or celebrity at all, that had that Beatles effect on people. Yeah. That they just fell down and started crying.
Yeah, and he pretty much was at that Beatles level. So
can I talk about due to my memory of that was it the Taste of a New Generation or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I still remember, to me, look, I liked Coke better, but being in 5th, 6th grade, whatever it was, when Pepsi was blowing up, I mean, Cindy Crawford aside, the commercials were just great anyway. There was one with, I almost said MC Search. There was one with, I think it was Young MC. You remember Young MC?
Yeah.
And he was like, I still remember the rap. It was like, to be cool and somewhat respectable, pick up Pepsi in these hype receptacles.
To be cool and be somewhat respectable, pick up Pepsi in these hype receptacles.
It was like Pepsi commercials, and it was like the intro to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You know, all those things were around the same time. Rap was like really blowing up, and Pepsi definitely caught that zeitgeist.
Coke was definitely feeling the pressure from Pepsi, but what to do about it? So how, you know, when you have something, even though you're number one, but your market shares falling, what do you do? So to counter this, Coke decided to take the formula for the number 4 selling soft drink at that time, the number 4 best-selling soft drink, which was Diet Coke. So Diet Coke had been introduced several years earlier, had a new formula. What Coke did is they reverse engineered it and basically took the Diet Coke formula and added sweeteners, non-artificial sweeteners to it. So when this came out and was announced, as we discussed before, it came out in April, was reversed by July. The reaction was swift.
It was brutal.
It was brutal. There was no subtlety to this. So going to an article from Vox.com, they discussed how some of the reactions to it. A columnist for the Rocky Mountain News named John Coit called Pepsi Sugar Plum Fairy Gag Juice, while Coke was, and they note here, the apparently preferable Daddy Juice. So I don't remember having any discussions of Sugar Plum Fairy Gag Juice versus Daddy Juice, and hopefully I'll never have that discussion again. But essentially, people didn't like it.
Listen, I don't know that we can overstate just how mad people were.
Yeah.
My parents were pissed. My mom was like, what? They're trying to be like Pepsi. What is this? It was definitely kind of a literal boomer moment there because it's like, imagine everyone's so addicted to Coke too. I mean, and it's like you had your Coke. That was your thing. And then all of a sudden, not only did they have new Coke, but like you said, they discontinued it. It's insane.
It went away. So one of the issues was that in doing this, they did taste tests, and people seemed to like the Coke taste test. So again, they weren't pulling this out of nowhere. But the problem was there's a difference between sampling a product, but then having it, you know, with your entire meal and with, you know, other things. The sweetness seemed, it was too sweet. So the idea of it being too sweet was also an issue because for years, Coke had promoted themselves as having a more authentic cola taste and not being too sweet, including one of their spokespeople, a gentleman by the name of Bill Cosby, who in the mid-'80s was America's dad. So here is an ad pre-New Coke.
This you have never seen before because I just made it up. The sweeter cola machine. Pepsi, RC, like CNC. Where's Coke? Coke does not live in that neighborhood because Coke is sweetened less than all of those. Now, what does that mean to me? Less sweet means more thirst quenching, more refreshing, more real cola taste, better with food, better when I'm really hot, better play the music because this is going to take a while. Coke is it. Thank you. Bolder, cleaner, smarter, more delicioso.
I think that was a first take. I think like that doesn't seem like there was, he just kind of sat there and talked for a minute and because he was Bill Cosby.
Yeah. And we're going to talk, you know, this is the cancel culture episode. Bill Cosby, we'll talk about him a little bit more later. But what impresses me about that is just his skill as a spokesman. I mean, there's some authoritativeness with that. Like you kind of feel like your dad just kind of told you this was better and you need to go out there and drink it.
His approach was pretty much, I'm Bill Cosby. Yeah. And this is what this is great. And this is what you have to drink. Because I said so. And it like he was just kind of riffing there and then was done.
And and again, I think this goes against the idea that they did this to make people, the conspiracy that they did this just to bring it back was, well, you can see from this following commercial.
Attention Pepsi drinkers, introducing the new taste of Coca-Cola, the best Coca-Cola ever. That's all I'm going to say. In fact, that's all I have to say. No more words. This stuff is great. I'm sorry. Really, I'm sorry.
So you'll notice there that he makes no comment on the taste. And again, what a magnificent, I mean, that's a pretty awesome commercial.
It's felt like a first take kind of. Do you know what I mean?
But in a way when a very skilled person does that.
That's what I mean. He's just going to roll in and be like, I mean, Bill Cosby single-handedly, made frozen pudding an acceptable like snack.
Well, and if you want to go down a YouTube rabbit hole, which I did, I actually watched that ad with my kid last night, and there's something about it. I mean, he was great. So I think
it made me want to eat pudding pops.
Yeah. So getting back to the conspiracy, that they did this to make people, to bring this back to make people appreciate the product. I think it's bad. It's not plausible to me. It doesn't hold up for a couple reasons. One, that sounds like something a bad boyfriend does. Of like, I'll show her, I'll quit doing the wash, or I'll go away for a little bit. It's just a multinational corporation doing that doesn't make any sense. On top of the expense that went into this, of having to film new commercials, of having the marketing output for this, that is, it does not, there's no logical sense into doing that. A multinational corporation is not going to do that. There's another conspiracy theory that's out there that, again, has a little bit of plausibility to it. When Coke came back, when Coke Classic was introduced, they did switch out the sweeteners a little bit. They put in less sugar, more high fructose corn syrup. And again, part of this was a big idea to do a kind of a switcheroo there to throw people off. So I think, again, there's a little bit of plausibility to it. But I think it's just they made a huge mistake.
Right.
Came back in. Again, by July, introduced Coke Classic, which for years, when you got your Coke, you had to say Coke Classic.
Yep.
New Coke kept around for a few years, eventually was rebranded as Coke 2.
I forgot about Coke
and
2.
I think pretty much faded into obscurity. I believe, actually, though, it was released, special edition was released recently because in the last season of Stranger Things, the kids encounter New Coke, or Coke as it was called originally. So for this, they walk among us, the conspiracy that Coke intentionally tanked the launch to make people appreciate their brand, or as some subterfuge to bring a new sweetener. Don't think it's true. But I do want to conclude with talking a little bit more about Bill Cosby. So we have talked about cancel culture. And I think, to me, Bill Cosby kind of gives the example of, I think that, for me at least, the appropriate way to deal with it. So, again, kids these days don't realize how big Bill Cosby was in the 80s. He was America's dad. He was a spokesperson for Coca-Cola and many other companies. For years, had the #1 rated television program that was sit-down viewing every Thursday night at 8 at my house.
Yep.
It come out in recent years that he has been habitually raping and assaulting women for years. I mean, decades. Not that doing it once is enough to be canceled for that.
Right.
So the way and now what's started to happen is things that he's done in the past have been retired or kind of canceled or hidden away. And again, kind of going back to my Roman Polanski stance of, if the Cosby Show comes on, am I turning it off? Probably not. It's a good show.
Yeah.
If Bill Cosby somehow was freed from prison and was, I heard that he had a new TV show coming on.
Right.
I probably wouldn't be very happy with whatever organization was promoting that.
Right. Yeah. And just to take it a step further, really unfortunate that he was a spokesperson for a drink with what we know now about Bill Cosby. So if he came back out and tried to pitch, Coke 3 or something. It definitely
Coke 3, Daddy Juice.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be almost as bad as Jared from Subway switching it up and being the Quiznos guy. I probably wouldn't be down with that either. So
right,
they walk among us.
All right, so the last one I wanted to do today technically came up in late 2019. That's OK Boomer, which sort of was a fleeting meme, and ironically, it probably only gets used now by boomers, according to The Atlantic anyway. When I started researching OK Boomer, most of the articles were, why OK Boomer is no longer cool to use,
right?
But you remember when this one kind of popped up by any chance?
It was even though 2020 has distorted my view of time and space, I feel like this is still pretty relatively recent. Like it was 2019, I think, that started.
It was. But I just remember when I first heard it, I thought it was funny. And when I was looking up where did this come from, the first article I found said, this is essentially a phrase that is a sassy comeback by the first thing I saw was millennials versus boomers, baby boomers. So then I found, no, it's really Gen Z. I think truthfully, it's just old people versus young people.
Right.
So you and I are both Generation X, I believe.
Yes.
Which, I have Generation X is sort of known as, I guess, somewhat of like the slacker generation, or just sort of the generation that kind of doesn't. I mean, it kind of makes sense that you and I are doing this episode talking about quit trying to cancel everybody, man. Like just kind of.
Well, I feel like our generation is somewhere in between, between the two, which we literally are. But also, I think in terms of temperament too. But one day there'll be a Generation Z podcast or whatever it is, tearing up whatever our generation probably messed up. But that's I think this is another way to distill. There's been never a time in history that the younger generation looked up at the older generation and said, those guys have it all together, and the older generations look back and go, they've nailed it. That's true. Exactly what I would do and or listen to.
So true. So true. And that's one of the reasons that I think OK Boomer is actually funny and good, and it's more about like you were saying, young people and old people than it is about specifically baby boomers. So baby boomers are the generation born between roughly 1946 and 1965. Baby boomers, and named after the fact that there was a literal baby boom once World War II was over. And then you have Gen Z, which is around 95 to 2015. So the Gen Z, though, has also recently been referred to as Zoomers. Have you heard this one?
I have heard this one.
So I guess maybe I'm an idiot. I just started hearing Zoomers, and I actually thought it had to do with the fact that young people are using like Zoom more. So I actually thought it had to do with Zoom because Zoom has become so popular.
It doesn't?
From what I found, no. It came because it was a mashup of a blend, is probably a better way to put it, of Boomer and Gen Z. So Gen Z already had gotten the term Zoomer before Zoom itself became a big thing. So I'm sure that it's definitely added to the use of Zoomer because I didn't hear Zoomer until really recently, and I've made that association, and so have you apparently, and a lot of people must have. But the irony is that Zoomers is actually a term that was used for boomers that were like really active. So there are lots of instances of people referring to themselves or the community saying we're not boomers, we're Zoomers because we're out, doing what boomers do, sailing and stuff. And that was probably ageist, but I just picture when I think of boomers, because we're not that far from. Well, yeah, we are. Let's be honest, we're not that close. We're closer. I guess you and I are. Dang, we really are smack dab in the middle.
Yeah.
I'm not good at math. I'm trying to figure out, are we closer to 1965 or '95 when we were born?
And the main thing is for us, you not to answer that. Because
exactly.
I don't know if you picked up on this when we spoke to Nick ML of Tennis Podcast recently. That I actually stated my real age, and his response was like I had done something wrong. I was offended like I had spilled something. I think he said, "Oh, Steve."
Like he was like, "Oh, Steve." Yeah. Like I was like, "What the hell?"
Like I made a duty.
It was actually really funny. Yeah. I trust me, I noticed that.
Yeah.
So, OK Boomer, the catchphrase, was coined by Generation Z or Zoomers on, of all places, TikTok. So we're covering. That was the reaction that Nick had when you said 45. So we've had Twitter. We've had, guys, we even talked about MySpace and what was the other horrible one? And Tumblr, and now TikTok. So basically, the original video was a TikTok video, which I will say I did not look at it. I just saw this being described. I did look. I made a half-hearted attempt, but I do try to stay away from TikTok. In November of 2019, there was a TikTok video uploaded. They had a older guy, thought to be a baby boomer, declaring that millennials and Generation Z have the Peter Pan syndrome. He said they don't want to grow up. And, he's essentially saying things that a lot of older people have been saying, and like you said, have always sort of said about the younger generation.
Right.
But, the stuff about participation trophies and entitlement and all the stuff that we all say about the young people. And at the end of the video, so it's a split screen, a Gen Zer, don't know how old he was, just silently holds up a notepad saying, "Okay, boomer." So the phrase after that went viral, and a bunch of iterations of the video showed up. The hashtag "Okay, boomer" at the time of this article had been used. You want to guess how many times? I'm gonna put you on the spot. How many times do you think "Okay, boomer," the hashtag, was used on Twitter from November of 2019 up until a couple months ago?
Oh gosh, it's got to be in the millions. I'll go with 10 million.
Yeah, I would have probably guessed something around 10 million. 723 million.
Wow.
It doesn't even seem right, but this comes from Vogue.
So it's got to be true.
And I forgot to mention, this is the first time we've had Vogue on, Vogue.com that I can remember. So it blew up a bunch of, they started coming up out with official gear. Somebody started selling sweatshirts and stuff. As you mentioned before, the disagreement between, age groups like this is not new. This has been happening since the end of time. So basically you've got the boomers, which are old people that are say, hey, you're too, you want a participation trophy, all that stuff. And then the Zoomers and millennials are like, hey, you deny climate change and other stuff like that. So I will say that this one did flame out pretty quickly. And like I said at the start of this, it's mostly used now ironically, not by young people,
right?
But ironically being used by old people to each other. Have you ever been called a boomer?
I actually have. There was a local issue in which I had been interviewed for the news regarding, and in a Facebook comment section, I was at one comment, "Okay, boomered me," and another one called me a snowflake.
Oh, you got both?
I got both. So maybe that's a good thing that some people think I look really old. Some people think I look much younger. But I think it helped definitely reinforce a constant theme we have here. I don't like terms that allow you to dismiss people that you're engaging with. You end the argument by just dismissing them as a boomer or a snowflake or being red-pilled or, you eat kale, so therefore you worship the devil. Wait a minute. Most of those things. So again, I don't like things you can summarily dismiss people, with certain exception.
And on that note, we are going to move on to our conversation with Kristen Carney right after this. And now a joke from Barry Popick.
I'm Barry Popick, and here's the joke. Taking a dog named Shark to the beach is a very bad idea.
For more jokes like this and much, much more, go to barrypopick.com. That's Barry Popick, POPIK.com. And now back to the show. Our guest tonight is a comic, a writer, and podcaster. She's been a co-host on Loveline and The Adam Carolla Show and written for Comedy Central, among many other things. Her podcast, Kristen, Chill, is available wherever podcasts are found. And she also has a service to help guys with dating and banter, which you can check out at kristenandchill.com. Kristen Carney, thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me and for rolling with the fact that I have a podcast called Kristen Chill and then a business called Kristen and Chill. So thank you for getting that. I don't even get it right. So
no problem. It's good branding. And I was thinking about, do I say the comma or do I just go Kristen Chill, or like, what's the preferred nomenclature?
Well, it really should be Kristen Shut Up. Really, that's frankly like really what it should be. But Kristen, Chill makes more sense because it then bleeds too easily into Kristen and Chill. And I'm in the process of trying to rebrand one or the other. So I don't have two things because they're really not the same whatsoever. One's a podcast about mental health pretty much and being depressed and neuroses. And then the other one is a dating advice or a dating service essentially, or like, you know, a dating coach service. So very, very different. One's like, I want to die. The other one's like, I don't want to die quite yet because I want to see if I can get a match. So.
Yeah. But if it doesn't work out, it can cycle back in. So it's like
Yes.
you have a good balance there with all your
Yeah.
businesses.
Exactly. Right.
Well, but I also, I mean, come on. Kristen and Chill is clearly a play on Netflix and Chill, or is it not? I mean, I assume it is, right?
Well, so what happened was I originally had a podcast called Mentally Chill,
Right.
and I lost my co-host and
Mhm.
eventually wanted to change the name a little bit, but yet keep it somewhat similar
Mhm.
to the original name so that people wouldn't be confused if they were searching for the podcast.
Yeah.
So I just thought, all right, Kristen and Chill, because chill's in there and it's kind of a phrase that people know of, but it had nothing to do with Netflix and chill and hooking up whatsoever. And then I started my business officially, and which is all about dating and hooking up in a sense. And so I thought, oh my God, well, this actually works better for the dating business. Now what do
Right.
I do? I'll just add a comma to one. I'm
Yeah.
an avoider. I don't really like to fix things because it takes too much energy. So just adding a comma was my version of fixing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I knew it would catch up.
I think it works. Well, I wanted to say how much of a thrill it is to have you on the show. We're big fans. I want to tell you how much I have appreciated you as one of the people, especially in the year of 2020, that has really been very, very sane. Like, you talk about sanity a lot, but you have been one of those people that you'll post something and I'll be like, yes, okay, all right. like not everybody is crazy right now. So I wanted to ask you, thank you for that, but also ask you, do you have people that you look at that you get that same feeling from? And do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. So it's almost like a beacon of light.
Yes.
That person that just reminds you that there's hope, that we have not all lost our minds, and basically you want to cling to them and for dear life and never let go, thus looking like one of the crazy ones. Like hug people so
Right.
hard because you don't want to let them go, and then they'll think, well, this person's crazy, but it's like, really, I'm just crazy about the fact that you're not crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's people that I feel like a moth to a flame with when it comes to that stuff. There's this guy named Gad Saad.
Mhm.
He I don't know if you guys know of him. He wrote a book called The Parasitic Mind, and it just came out recently, but he's a professor, but also incredibly funny, but a huge proponent of sanity. And he came from Lebanon, where he was essentially persecuted as a child for being Jewish there. So he's kind of seeing these parallels between what's happened in the United States and westernized culture and where he grew up. So I love him, and I truly go through like almost like once a night this almost psychotic phase of I need to reach out to him, I need to find his personal email, and I need to write him my manifesto. And then I get a hold of myself and I don't do it. So I've never really interacted with him. I just like all of his tweets like a fangirl. And then like other people that that just speak truths, like Bret Easton Ellis, who you wouldn't really think, he's just so level-headed.
Mhm.
So people kind of fly under the radar. He's not really outspoken with it necessarily, but he lives the sane life. And so yeah, I absolutely know what you're talking about. And I love the idea of being one of those people for people.
Yeah, Bret Easton Ellis is interesting because I don't think of him as being any sort of, if any political persuasion. I guess I would have thought he was more liberal, but when you hear him talk, it's just like, okay, good, common sense. And that's something that seems to have emerged recently, is the saying, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, just what you're saying actually makes sense. And
you're going to be consistent, whether it's team red or team blue. I'm just going to say the same thing. I'm not going to switch it around if my team does something different.
Exactly. And I mean, that's like an epidemic right now of the hypocrisy. There's two things that I hate in this world. One, and there, I wish I could say funny things like talking at the movies. Like I wish I could hate people for inconsequential things again.
Mhm.
But now I hate them for like literally ruining the world, not just ruining a movie. But the number one thing I hate is bullying, and the number two thing I hate is hypocrisy. And both of those things are rampant right now. And I can't seem to take my mind off of this car wreck that society is becoming. And I don't know if it's just becoming that straight, like online and the internet, and it's not as clear to people who don't scour Twitter every day, or if it is actually making its way off of Twitter, which I feel like it is. But I don't know if my vision is skewed.
Yeah, that's something that we've talked to a lot of people about. Pretty much every guest we have, we'll ask them is, you're out there. We'll talk to comedians and other people that are in front of different types of people and ask, is it as bad out there as the internet makes it feel? And we're very biased. We think social media ruins everything. At the same time, please check us out at Speaksies on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah.
But we agree with you.
Well, and Kristen, I had that written down too. Like, I wonder if, and this is just a thought here, because I wondered the same thing. Like, is it just online? And frankly, so we did the research for the term cancel culture, which really has only been around for used in this way for the last couple of years. There was call out culture that was before that. But, and then there was boycotting and other things. But cancel culture started on Twitter. That's where it really lives now. I wonder if because we can't go outside as much or do things as much, we're online more, and maybe it's snowballing from there. I don't know, but it does feel like it's a mostly internet phenomenon.
Yeah. It does. And I do know over the course of the past 4 years plus that I've slowly had like a little bit of an air leak of my tolerance tire of this stuff. Like, I've been really, really quiet, but slowly and more surely by the day, I've had a hard time keeping that leak in check. And before, when it first started, I was afraid, because not that I would become a victim of cancel culture, because I'm not cancelable in the sense that I'm not like huge, or I don't have a product that's related to me that, would take away funding or something. But it was more so a social pressure.
Right.
And so I would think, well, I don't want this person to judge me, or I don't want this person to unfollow me. And so I was living within this box of fear. And I left LA about 2 years ago, and kind of just let it all go in my rearview mirror. And because of that, I'm able to now speak out in these quote unquote sane ways, because I don't fear my peers as much. I've certainly lost a lot of I say peers, I don't say friends, because they're not friends that I keep in touch with all the time. They're acquaintances. And I've certainly lost a lot of acquaintances due to my vocalness of the sanity. And it's been really, really hard. But then I have moments where I feel like empowered, almost like I took a Superman pill, and I feel like I can do anything because I don't rely on my peers for approval, and I can be myself. And it gives you a little bit of, if you can be immune from groupthink, it really in a way is like a superpower if you utilize it in the right way. It could also be the opposite of a superpower and really limit you if you're not going along with a group and you're also isolating and you're not empowering yourself. So I kind of waver between it being a curse and a blessing, and I'm hoping to tip to the blessing side more often than not.
And I want you to know that there are still people out there getting mad at petty things for you. I'm picking up that burden. You can be mad at your two big things. I will be mad at people being loud where they shouldn't be loud, and
thank you,
using their speaker phones in public. And I have a whole list I'll send to you.
You're like my petty assistant.
Yeah, that's right. That could be a side for Kristen and Comma Chill.
Yeah,
that's great. I love that.
Yeah. So I will tell you that for every peer that you may have lost, you've gained at least, 2 chubby bearded podcasters like us, because it definitely, so Steve will tell you before, when I said, we should get Kristen Carney on this show, because I have noticed, I think something's going on over the last year or so. I've noticed, and again, if this sounds stalkerish, I am so sorry, but the reason I noticed it is because not many people have the balls to do it. Like, you've been saying things or posting things, and not even anything too aggressive.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's just sort of like
crazy.
It's like, oh my gosh, she actually retweeted something that I might be scared to retweet or say on because of social pressure. And it's like, that is so cool. I actually think one time you posted something of Kyle Dunnigan's, and I was just like, on Instagram, oh my gosh, thank you. Because he's a guy too, we were talking about the beacons. and you're this way too, that use humor, but to poke fun at things that are going on right now. And I love it. It's like, okay, good. We can have people that are funny and also see the ridiculous of what's going on and have the stones to actually put it out there.
Yeah. Well, Kyle Dunnigan, he's one of the beacons, like you said. I love him so much, and I could only dream to actually satirize things the way he can. And I do get nervous sometimes. I'm like, is this not funny? Is this just angry? And so I do have to check in with, like, do I seem like a 60-year-old angry man, or do I seem like a fun, young, happy person? Because inside I'm an angry 60-year-old man. But I don't want those. I don't want the cracks to show. So I have to check in to make sure.
It's actually a conversation we have all the time. We'll like pregame stuff. I'm like, all right, are we exposing ourselves as the old man that we really are, that we're fighting off? And then Scott catches me cutting the grass like in a full suit, like later. The old man comes out in other ways.
Yeah. So your Twitter bio says that you see through bullshit, and I wanted to know, is that something that you have developed over the years, or was that a God-given gift? And what do you mean by that?
I don't even know. I've actually thought about this a lot because so when I was in second grade, it was the first memory I have of thinking, wow, that's bullshit. That's really dumb. And I don't think anyone else is thinking this. I'm weird. And it was these two girls who were in the lunchroom. I never fit in with girls mostly, or people. I've never had a group, basically. So I've always felt like I've been watching things from the outside. And when you are on the outside, it gives you that vantage point to be able to see bullshit, because you're not wrapped up in it. So when you're not emotionally invested in something, then it's up for grabs to see the truth in. And so these two girls, again, I'm in second grade, so I'm like 8 years old-ish, and they refused to go to the bathroom without each other. And the lunchroom lady, whoever she was, would not let them go together. It was one at a time. And they were putting up such a stink and making such a scene over not being able to go to the bathroom together. And I just remember thinking how fake it was and how fake they were, because they don't need to share. They don't share a bladder. They don't need to go to the bathroom at the same time in order to get the urine out of their bodies. And I just wanted to say that. I wanted to intervene and call out these little girls for just being obnoxious. And so it kind of began then. And then when I got, into like 5th, 6th grade, I started getting bullied pretty, or like picked on, or just girls being mean to me on the regular. And I don't know if they did it because I could see through their bullshit, or if it was because I didn't really involve myself. And then I started seeing the bullshit because I was seeing this ludicrous behavior. Then it started going through my whole life. So basically throughout high school, it was these girls that were mean and not good people who would be praised as good people. They would be rewarded. Like they like stole stuff from Macy's and got arrested, but yet they're treated as if they're these like perfect queens and beings. And so I was always so laser focused on the injustice of that. And so my whole life, since then, it's, since 8th grade, or since being 8 years old, it's essentially just been how I see things and how I watch scenarios and see them play out.
Yeah. And it makes total sense, because it sounds like also you're looking for the logic, right? Like going back to second grade, there's no logic involved. And then fast forward to 2020, there are times where you're like, this doesn't pass muster. It doesn't make sense. Do you think that the bullying stuff, how did that contributed in your career choice at all, or like how has that affected your life? Because that's not something I've had to deal with, and I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, I have a weird relationship with bullying because I hate it, but I also think it's necessary in certain ways to create character. I think without bullying, we wouldn't see maybe the art that we see today, or we wouldn't see see the same amazing stories told today, because I think it makes you develop deeper levels of thinking. And so I don't want bullying to happen, and I feel bad for people who get bullied, but I also kind of go, well, cool, because then now we've got a better screenwriter, or we've got a better, more well-rounded human being that wants to hold the door for someone because they know being shitty is not cool. So yeah, I have a real hard push and pull with that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for interpreting my very poorly worded question, because that was kind of what I was going for. And it's so true. I mean, if everyone's fitting into the groups and buying into, like you call it bullshit, it's hard to think about second graders going to the bathroom as, what bullshit. But it's like, that if everyone was in those groups, you would have nobody that was Adam Carolla, brought him up before. He talks about like John Popper of Blues Traveler. If he was out getting laid in high school, he probably wouldn't be playing the harmonica the way that he is now. And it's the same sort of thing.
Exactly. So yeah, you need it to color your world a little bit. But I do think I didn't really answer your question. I went a direction that I was like predetermined in my head to go to. So I can't remember what you actually asked. There
was no actual question. I said the word bullying and how are you now? It made no sense. So you didn't you saved me.
But career choices stuff.
Yeah. That's
I felt like from being, quote unquote bullied. I do hesitate to say bullied, because actually Carolla, when I was on with Adam once, he was like, that doesn't sound like bullying to me. And it was definitely bullying.
Well,
I don't think you have to be punched in the face to actually be bullied. But I do now feel a little bit like treading lightly on saying that. I was definitely picked on and not liked. But in terms of the career, I think internally I always wanted to either perform or be in the arts, or something to that extent. But this pushed me, and I don't know if I wasn't bullied, if I would have ever gone to a different career path, like something like I do, because I really felt like I just want vengeance. Like I just want them to see how good she's doing, and the way to do that is to be in the public. I did already like it to begin with. I grew up dancing. I was part of a performing group, and we would travel and like go to Disney and do shows there and stuff. So I always did have that in me, but I think it pushed me out of spite. Just like, you want to, you want to fuck with me? Cool. I'll make sure I look really pretty in a dress at the Emmys someday.
I love that. Yeah, that's fantastic. I was curious.
Also unhealthy, but
probably
incredibly.
But like you said, there's two different questions. Like, is it healthy and good, or is it necessary and it happens?
I've taken from this also. Apparently, you can shoplift from Macy's and be praised for it. So once things open up a little bit more, I'll try. If you see a guy in a bandana getting arrested,
Well, they were actually the first rioters. They set the trend. We'll
just
riot. Or loot, not riot. Loot.
That's right.
Peaceful protesters.
Yeah.
How did you get hooked up with Carolla Digital and that whole thing? That was the first time I had heard when you were, the times that you've co-hosted on that show.
So that a little bit of a long story that I'll try to truncate. When I first moved to LA, it was 2008 or 9, and Carolla was still on the radio. I have no idea why I was up at like 8:30 in the morning to hear him on the radio, because I usually sleep until noon. But for whatever reason, at that point in time, I was in the car a lot of the mornings early, and I was listening to Carolla and Teresa Strasser. And I remember thinking, I could be Teresa.
Yeah.
Like I feel like Teresa. I think like Teresa. I think like Adam. They're my people, because I never really felt like I had my people anywhere, but especially in comedy. And I knew Adam wasn't really necessarily like the trendy choice. I just knew that that's where I would fit and flourish. So I never loved being on stage doing stand-up comedy consistently. I liked it every now and then, but I would get very anxiety ridden over it and really lose a lot of quality sleep, etc.
Yeah.
So I was looking to like just get into podcasting somehow, because I could be funny, or I could talk and not really have to be on stage every night. And so I kind of set my goal on like working with Carolla. It just seemed like the only fit. And so then I just wanted to get into podcasting in any capacity that I could. So, and anyone can get into podcasting.
Well, right. Yeah.
We're
as you can see.
Yeah.
But to be on Adam Carolla, and not only be on the show and consistently hold your own, which I don't know how anybody holds their own with him, because he just goes and goes and goes. So moving on, I am curious what prompted you to get into the dating coaching. And my theory is that you had so many guys sliding into the DMs or contacting you that you said these guys suck. Is that theory correct, or is there more to it than that?
I really don't get that many people sliding into my DMs, and I
Okay.
feel really insulted by it, honestly. Like, why? You know, people might assume I'm getting DMs. I'm not getting that many DMs. I'm very hurt.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I get some, but
Yeah.
I don't get tons and tons and tons, but I do get some.
Okay.
But no, that was so. I'm flattered by your guess, but really what it was I was doing my podcast called Ask Women with my co-host Marnie, who I'm still doing the show with. We've done it now for many, many, many years. And it was a dating show, a show about dating. I knew nothing about dating, but I was on the show with her because we started together for her to be the relationship expert and for me to be the comic or the comedian and the comic relief. And so the whole time we were doing the show, I had a boyfriend and didn't really buy into any of this like coaching stuff. And then my boyfriend and I broke up, and I started going on dating apps for the first time ever. And guys could not talk and banter and carry a conversation. And it depressed me because I just thought, I'm never going to find anyone. These are the options. This is how they communicate. They
Right.
have no personality. There's nothing fun. There's nothing pizzazzy. There's nothing to make them stand out. And so on my podcast, Marnie, who is a relationship coach, said, why don't you write a how-to banter guide for these guys? Because I kept talking about how to banter. Like, it's easy. Here's how you do it. Here's the rhythm, and here's really all wit is just one thing connected with another thing, and da, da, da. And so she said, you should write this banter guide and I'll pay you. And so I said, yeah, sure. So I figured it would take me like a weekend. Ended up taking me like 6 months. I really kind of figured out a little bit of this formula on how to be witty, essentially, and banter and be charming in conversation. And so Marnie started selling it, and then I started getting requests for one-on-one lessons. And so once enough requests came in, I was like, oh, this could actually be like a business. And so then I started my business.
So when you started this, did you find the problem with guys? Was it, I guess, they didn't know how to banter, or what they thought was banter didn't count, or were they just dumb guys who were like, I see this, I want this, sniff, sniff, grunt, grunt. That was the extent of their courtship.
Yeah, fart. They were mainly, obviously, they were mainly just bland. They didn't even know about banter. It seemed like banter wasn't even something that would come into their brain. They just would say, hey, what's up? And it was like, now you take it, girl. And like, then all of a sudden you're responsible to try to create something out of nothing when you may not even be that interested. They started the conversation with you. So yeah, they just were flat, like personality-less.
So it's interesting because I am divorced, and I had been with the same person since I was 18 years old. So I got on some dating apps, and I definitely was a hey, what's up guy, because it's like, I think you overthink things sometimes. Is that fair? Or maybe guys aren't thinking, but for me, I overthink because I'm like, I don't want to come on too strong and hello, milady. I love that sweater you were, it's like, what exactly? Right. So this is the nut that you're kind of cracking here with, hey, there's a way to do this that's not creepy or weird.
Right. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to make you into a soap opera actor who's like, so tell me, yeah, there's definitely a balance, and you don't want to try too hard. So that's one thing when I work with guys, to reel them in from going over the top and being very complimentary or trying to be too funny, and sometimes they try to be funny and it has no basis in her profile or any connection to her. So it's like, they're just talking at someone.
Yeah.
So there's a balance, and I understand the, hey, what's up thing. But what happens is, it's not even just detrimental. It's not detrimental for me as much as it is for men, because there's a gajillion men using hey, what's up on the same 50 girls in your area.
Right.
So they're not going to respond. I mean, if maybe it's James Bond, they might not even really respond to even James Bond saying, hey, what's up? Right. So you have to be able to stand out to even get a response. So it helps guys as much as it can help girls enjoy the process.
What about like dating profiles? Do you go into that with guys too, or is it more about once you've connected?
So I do two separate kind of services. So one is teaching guys how to banter and engage and to be intriguing and alluring to girls online, but then I also make over guys' dating profiles. And I actually was just doing one before we got on here. So yeah, I talk a lot about the dating profile, and it's like you have to have the good profile, obviously, to get your foot in the door to even be able to banter in the first place.
Well, it's cool, and it's the Kristen and Chill where you can sign up for that or reach out to you for that.
I have a question. So without giving any secret sauce there, what's like the number one, like when you look at a guy's dating profile and you're rebooting it, what's like the most consistent, like kind of broad bad thing that you see?
Well, I'll say two. One are bad photos. Guys have really no concept of how to present themselves because your dating profile is like a billboard. And it's like someone who's never used Photoshop now designing a billboard, and it is illegible and not interesting. And so, yeah, guys have a really hard time with photos because a lot of them use tons of selfies, just as girls would too. Like, I don't think girls are perfect. It's just that I'm helping guys.
Right.
So way too many selfies with the exact same expression in every single photo. So then you just look like a serial killer.
Yeah. Or you look like you just said, "What's up?" And that's the face you made right after.
It is, yes. The photo
what's up face.
of what's up.
That's really funny.
Boring. Yes. That's a perfect way to put it. And then another thing guys do is go way too long in their bios where they give tons of information that no one cares about because they don't care about you yet. So you have to make a girl care about you to care about the fact that you also enjoy skiing.
Right. That's a great point.
Yeah, because guys will open up and just say, "Hey, I also like to ski." Cool. So do 4,000 other guys. Why are you interesting enough for her to care that you also ski?
Exactly.
So it's like,
there's nothing inherently exciting about the fact that you can ski.
Yeah. So you want to add a level of differentiation before you go in with similar hobbies. Like, you want to show your value when you go in with something interesting and unique that she's never heard before as an opener. Demonstrate that you've got a command of the language, a command of humor. You don't apologize for who you are because you can go in with bold statements. And then, ooh, who's this guy? Oh, he likes to ski. I like to ski.
That's great. Well, okay. So have you ever had a guy that reached out to you and he was already so good at banter that you were almost stumped? Or is it always like, oh my, I'm so glad I'm here. You need me.
For me, like personally on my experience.
Yeah, I'm saying I don't mean like your dating experience. I mean for your services. Somebody reached out to you for your services and they were already like really good. I don't know why I thought of that. I was just curious.
That's a great question, actually, because this past week I had a guy from Toronto, pretty good at banter. He sent me so I asked to have screenshots of some chats they've had, so I can, or if he's had, so I can assess his communication style and where he's going wrong and his skill level. And so he sent me these screenshots. They were all pretty good. I could see nitpicky things to fix, but I kind of didn't want him to work with me because it's harder for me when someone's already really good to kind of take them to the next level. I can do it. It's just more effort for me. But if a guy's really terrible, it's easier for me to know exactly where to start. But yeah,
that's what I was wondering, because I was thinking there's probably 95% of guys that you're like, okay, this is rough. But I wonder if there's that time when you're like, oh man, I really gotta to improve. This guy's gonna be tough. So
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time so far. I wanted to ask before we go, what you're up to now. The stock sort of, how have you been doing in quarantine thing, but also like, do you have any new projects going on? Are you're still doing Ask Women? What's going on with you, and what can we promote?
God, I wish I could answer this because I don't even know. I can answer the fact about quarantine, which is I'm losing my mind.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I've never liked to be around people. Like I've never really needed people, but this has been proof that I really kind of do need. It's not even people. It's just I need to be in the world. And so every day waking up and feeling like Groundhog's Day is definitely getting to me, and I do struggle with depression. So it's like, all right, this is becoming bad enough to where I have a depression uniform again. Like I always, like I haven't changed my clothes. Like I slept in this, and and so it's been hard, but I'm trying to stay in the mindset that I'm not the only one, and this is for everybody. And so we're all in it together, because that's cheesy bullshit. And I don't think everyone is in it together, because I think people are really out for each other's throats right now. But I do have to keep in mind that I'm not alone in my room. There's people alone in their rooms by the millions.
And you are definitely not the only person sleeping in their clothes. And I can testify as two people that telework throughout their day jobs. You're not the only person there. Everyone is sleeping. And I have a 12:30 afternoon shower time now. I've kind of rotated of when I shower and clean. And I hope none of my coworkers hear this, but
yeah, but for me, that's like the break of dawn. 12:30 p.m. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to get better. But yeah, I've been sleeping really late. In terms of projects, I'm in limbo, and I feel like I'm on hold. Like my life feels like it's on hold, because I had a long couple years. So when I got back from LA, my dog got really sick. I was going to move to New York City. So I'm upstate right now. I've been upstate for a very long time, which is not desirable. So my dog got sick. So I was putting off going down to the city until basically he died. So he died. It was awful. And then right after that, my other dog got sick. And then my mom got cancer. And so once my mom got cancer, I was like, all right, now I can't go to the city. Now I have to stay upstate and help my mom. And so that was basically a full year. And about a week after she was told she was in remission, COVID happened and the lockdowns happened. And then basically New York City turned into Gotham City. And Batman has not come to rescue us yet. So I'm still upstate. So I really want to do more of podcasting, because I'd been doing Kristen Chill.
Right.
I've put that on hold because a lot of the people that listen aren't so happy with my newfound freedom of my position and point of view on sanity. So I got a lot of hate from that. And so I'm trying to figure out what to do next in terms of a podcast, because I love podcasting, and my dating podcast, I don't really consider podcasting, because it's really just dating centric. It's not like I can just riff and have fun. So when I was hoping to get to the city and then be able to do the show there so that I could start having guests on. I don't love doing it over the computer. And so that has not happened. Obviously, I'm not in the city. I don't know if I'll ever get to the city now because of the state of it. And excuse me, I'm burping now. I think that means my time's up.
That's perfect.
That's the
perfect for our podcast.
We've been burping the whole time.
So so I'm on hold. I don't really have anything new at the moment. Figuring it out.
Listen, I definitely meant everything I said. I told Steve before the show, I was trying to think of kind of what should we start talking. And I said, I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I really have found you to be a beacon. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
I think it's like, I can tell as just a fan of yours and somebody who follows your social media and the kind of the evolution. And I'm like, I'm here for it, as the kids say. It's good stuff. So we can't wait to see, what else you do, but also just your tweets. So your socials are Kristen Carney on Twitter, Chris Carn on Instagram, and are there any other social medias that we should be sending people
No, I shut off my Facebook. That was a cesspool. It made Twitter look like Disneyland. Yeah, which I was surprised about.
Election season vacation from Facebook. I'll check back in a few weeks, see who's mad at each other still. But
see if the slime is still bubbling.
Yeah, that is one thing I don't miss. I actually got off, but I'm sure I'll end up back on. But Kristen, thank you for your time. This has been a blast. Steve, did you have anything else? Or
no? I want to hear more about bantering, but I don't want to be the weird Mary guy that asks too many questions. So
I'm here. I don't know if your listeners are here for it, but if we hang up, or if you still want to talk on the podcast, I'm down to give info and advice.
I may just have to reach out myself and get your services, because I'm still out there in the wasteland of trying to date as a 42-year-old, divorced dad, which is fun.
He does pretty well.
But it's so normal. There's so many of you. If you were the only one, I'd be like, what a loser. But
what I think is interesting too is, before I was single, I thought like dating apps, Tinder, Bumble, these were like really were cesspools, which I guess they kind of are, but people are getting married that met on Tinder. And it's not, I think there's a stigma to the dating apps, but honestly now, especially with COVID, but even before, I don't know how else you really, this sounds terrible. I'm not really sure how else you really meet people. I mean, work, are you supposed to meet people at work? I don't know. So it does feel like the stigma is gone. I mean, is that fair, or is it still bad to say you could go on Tinder?
No, you can definitely go on Tinder. There's no real stigmas anymore. There's STDs, obviously. That's like,
the original stigma.
The original stigma. But no, I mean, it's so common, but I do think it's fun when you play around with the idea of saying to the girl that you're seeing from the app, like, let's say we met at Whole Foods.
Right.
Just like pretending there's a stigma is more fun, or is fun, but no, there's no real stigma anymore. You really there's nowhere to meet anybody. The only places are literally like Tinder, Twitter. It's like T's, like anywhere with a T. Twitter, Tinder, the alley that starts with a T. I don't know. An alleyway, the alleyway. So
Tristan Mingle. No.
Tristan Mingle.
This is why I'm not in comedy. Oh gosh, I had okay, thank you. I know what I was going to ask you too. Okay, good. Now we're really starting to roll here with some of my or listener questions that we solicited before. Talked about sliding in the DMs. Okay, Steve doesn't like that term. It makes him feel weird, and
it sounds dirtier than it is. Which
sending
is
a message to someone on social media, especially if you really don't know them, or especially is that like is that even okay? Or is that like automatically you've committed a foul, right? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like you're already seen as in a certain way from that girl, because you're one of the many guys who are now sliding into her DMs.
Yeah. Like, is it bad etiquette? And so first and foremost, would you say, I mean, is there an etiquette, I guess, but is it like bad etiquette, but are you also just seen as like a loser? I don't know. Does it work?
It can work. So the majority of the time it won't work because it's unsolicited. Whereas if a girl's on a dating app, she's there because she wants to date. If she's on Instagram, she's not advertising necessarily that she wants to date. She's advertising that she likes posting pictures. So you have a level to get through. So your chances that she's interested are lower. However, the way in that I recommend is going in, adding value. Never just saying, hey, beautiful, what's up? You will then be seen as lame and a douchebag again, unless all of a sudden, it's like you're appearing like you're James Bond or something.
Right.
So going in just like that, yes, no, you're in a pile of dweebs and you're written off. But if you go in and
I think I joined pileofdweebs.com actually. It didn't help.
That could be such a good dating site. I mean, how many dweebs are out there right now? We're all dweeb. Everyone's turned into a dweeb. And so when you go into a message or a slide into the DMs, what I recommend is this adding value. So by adding value, I mean adding something that she might find interesting, or may add to her knowledge base, or speaks to her interests. And so that does involve maybe a little bit of stalking. So you're like, okay,
you read my mind. I was going to say, is that weird though, that you're like, hey, I noticed that you, like, even in today, I'm like, so I've noticed that your posts have been more and I'm like, have I crossed over to weird? And if so, thank God I edit this show. We'll debrief later, but
well, the way to avoid that is to not phrase it in the traditional way of like, I noticed that you're into this stuff and I thought that you might find this interesting.
Right.
You find an angle and you find something unique and witty to say along with the thing that you're adding, that you're sending with value.
Right.
So I don't have any examples off the top of my head, but let's say she is into a certain type of music or something. Don't just message her, follow her first. So you're not just sending a message. So first follow, like a couple posts so that she's familiar with your name, see what she's posting. So it's like, you want to set the stage. It takes a little bit more work and more patience, but so you're following her, maybe she posts something about a band or she went to see a concert. You like it, you can leave a little comment down the road a couple weeks from now. Oh, here's what I found about that concert. But you can say something jokey. And again, I don't have anything off the top of my head, but you could call out the fact that you're not a stalker, or you could play up the fact that you're a stalker, like own it in a jokey way.
Right.
Like in the 3 weeks that I've been waking up and going to bed to your pictures, you know, so it's like you kind of double down on the creep factor if you want just to stand out and do something different, and it shows that you're bold, and no one who actually is a stalker is going to say they're a stalker. So you don't have to worry about her going, oh my God, this guy's a super stalker.
That's how I've tried to get away with it, is to do that. Do ladies notice if you're gonna slide in the DMs? I said it. All right, I didn't. It still sounds dirty. Do ladies notice, like, hey, he sent this at 3:10 in the morning, or he sent it at 2 in the afternoon? Is that much of a factor? Like time you send stuff?
I would not send it at 3 in the morning. I would send it at healthy hours. I would also send it in the hours that most it's not high traffic, where maybe other guys are sending it. So midnight, 11 o'clock during the day makes it seem more casual.
That and the booty call hours of.
And it also looks like you're lonely in bed and could be whacking off and looking at her pictures. So
but according to what you said earlier, I mean, any time of day could be lonely in bed now, right? Like during the quarantine. But
you could even joke with that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's 3 p.m. Just getting out of bed was
guess enjoying Jeffrey Toobin when they grow up.
Man, that guy got off soft.
Talking about getting off.
Yeah,
there's exactly, and there's no way to not make an inappropriate joke when you talk about the Toobin thing, because
he should be mocked regularly by everybody. That should be on the TV 24. That should bring everyone together.
Well, I'm blown away because I know how bad everyone looks on Zoom, how he could even be turned on with how bad everyone looks to be able to whack off.
Yeah. What was he? Well, he had, I think. Well,
no offense to you guys. You guys look lovely.
Thank you.
No, we don't. But thank you. Steve does. Steve always looks fashionable.
Well, you've never seen us going at ourselves either. I'm sure our Zoom O faces are probably even more exciting to look at.
I was going to say, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often, but probably does. It just doesn't make the news.
People have figured out how to stay low on their camera or whatever.
I guess. Yeah, there's a lot of things that could go wrong with the with these being on video. I mean, I joined a conference call at work and didn't know my camera was on. I think we've all kind of done that, and I got a good hard look at myself. I mean, nothing bad was happening, but I was just like, oh God. And as fast as you can, you turn that thing off, and then you really have to take a hard look in the mirror. Like I'm going to work looking like this. This is sad. But the other part is, I don't think I can even fit any of my work clothes anymore. I am a sweatpants guy. I was already a sweatpants guy. I am like, I've doubled down on the sweatpants.
It's not just you. I had to put on some dress pants last week, and there was some breath holding, and having a scene from flashback from Days of Confused, like where they get the pliers out to like put somebody's jeans on.
But you guys are lucky though that the skinny jeans. I mean, I don't play up the feminist card of poor women, but like our pants are so much more uncomfortable than yours.
True.
It feels like, I mean, it was bad wearing skinny jeans before, but now it does feel like you've painted on cement and you've let that cement dry. That's how uncomfortable pants feel now. And I'm in Walmart sweatpants at the moment. And
shout out to Walmart.
Yeah. I'd move my leg, except my pants would tear if I did that.
No, I'll tell you something that happened to me. I was going out to my car. I was going out to get in Steve's car, and my pants were so tight that as I got in the car, my pants like set off my car alarm because the pants were so tight. They squeezed the key fob, and I was like, that's a bad sign.
That's amazing. That's an achievement. You've hit achievement lazy zone or whatever has gotten you at that point. That's you've reached
in
the
Scott's
top.
Defense, he's always been like a Patrick Swayze Dirty Dancing look to his pants.
Absolutely.
So he just does that naturally.
Yeah. It is my look, but I mean there are limits as well. When you're setting up when you squat over and you set off your car alarm with your pants, that's again another time to take a long hard look in the mirror. But you brought up Walmart. Look, you can hate on Walmart all you want. You can get some very comfortable clothes for like $3 at Walmart. You just can't think too hard about how that's happening, I guess.
Yeah. You can't. I try to avoid Walmart, but I went there yesterday. I was proud of myself because you can get stuck in their clothing department and you're like, oh, this isn't bad. And then you have something hit you that's like, this is Walmart, snap out of it.
I know.
You're lost it, man. I'm like, oh, this is a cute shirt. Oh, I like these pants. And then Yeah, back to reality.
What's worse, since we're just all over the place now? What's worse, buying extended shopping at Walmart in the clothing section, or getting a Big Bite at 7-Eleven as for lunch? Is there one that you would say? I mean, maybe you're a 7-Eleven Big Bite fan, but we're not fans over here.
I don't know what a Big Bite is, so that might speak to how great I am. I'm not. I eat a lot of shitty food.
Don't worry about it. No.
Steve, is it a hot dog?
We just gained so much respect for you right now.
It's a hot dog. So think about that. Okay. Think about a hot dog with, just traditional pig anus is fine, but whatever the Big Bite is, don't worry about it.
You've been to the movie theater and you see like the hot dogs on rollers.
Rolling, yes, okay.
Yeah.
It's basically those. And Steve challenged me one day years ago when I came back. We were working together, and I came back with a Big Bite. He just looked at me and he goes, "You've just like crossed the line between man and animal."
Right.
With that.
Right.
But we bring up how much we hate Big Bites, and usually we get some defenders. Yeah. But for you to not even know what it is, you're on a pedestal right now. Yeah.
Whoever named him Big Bite must be kind of small, because I don't think they're very big. I've seen those, and I'm like, I could get down at least 2 of those easy. So they need to call them small bites.
Yeah, it's like the Big Mac is now not that big anymore either. So,
but to answer your question though, what's worse?
Yeah, what is worse? Now that you know what it is, yeah.
I'm gonna say the Big Bite, because death could come from the Big Bite.
It could.
That's true.
I mean, maybe if you're wearing an ugly outfit from Walmart, someone shoots you just to get you out of your misery. Death could come from buying Walmart clothes and being there a long time. But I would say that whatever is going to lead to death would be more offensive.
It could lead to death. Plus, it's also, when you shop extended times at Walmart, it's inward shame, right? Because but other people don't really know, because the clothes, like you showed that your leg, it basically looked like any pants you'd get anyway.
Right.
So
right.
The key to Walmart, I found, and this is tough as you're someone that likes to sleep in. You got to go like 6 a.m. If I want the 24-hour, and there's still some squirrely people there, but it's like a zombie movie. Like there's no one really there.
I feel like 24 hours a day there's a zombie movie.
I found one that there was like a time, but it's like, what's the thing like with photography, like the golden hour, like where the sun's going down. There is like a Walmart golden hour. You can go in there and you're shame free.
Brown hour.
You don't really see everyone, and then everyone starts to kind of rise up and or come out.
But that is part of the I guess the fun of Walmart is people of Walmart can strike anytime, because you go in at 3 o'clock and you're like, and you do that thing where you're like, what are they doing here? And then you're like, what am I doing here?
Well, I always look around and think, do I look like I belong? Do I blend in? Totally. I almost feel like Jennifer Aniston could walk into Walmart and all of a sudden she looks like she grew up in a trailer. It does something to people where it's just like, I've seen these people outside of Walmart. They don't look like monster zombies. And now we're in here. It's like they're decrepit. Their hair's breaking off. Their skin is peeling off.
They develop a meth addiction.
Yes. But you step outside and all of a sudden it's like, oh, and you're just back to being a human again. It's really weird. It's something else, I'll tell you.
That's a good point. When is the golden hour, Steve, would you say?
I'd say between 6 and 7.
We'll have to well, there are new classy Walmarts now that are like, well, it's like, they call it like the Walmart neighborhood market or something.
It's Walmart.
Yeah,
that's actually the one I went to where I used to work.
Figured when you said that.
But trust me, I got real cocky after a while, and I'd go at 12 noon. Like, no, shut it down.
Yeah.
No matter when you go to Walmart, there'll be a family with 3 children.
Yeah.
That should be in bed, whether it's like 11 at night on a school night or 3 a.m. You're like, why are there 3 kids? And those 3 kids aren't going to bed anytime soon. You can tell they're not going home and get put to bed.
Molson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the extra hands.
Right. The Mountain Dew Code Red or whatever. Yeah. Oh, it's fun to judge people. I love it. Yeah. I love it so much.
There goes our Walmart sponsorship they were about to give us.
Yeah.
We still have our sweatpants.
Yeah. We'll have to. We're still in talks with Kmart. Actually, Kmart I don't think is even around anymore. But Kmart. So there was a Kmart near my house. You remember the one Kmart that Steve and I? Well, I almost told you we live near each other. We're in the same room, so you probably caught that. There was a Kmart. Last time I was there, I went to buy like bags to put leaves in. And it was like, there was like definitely a prostitute and a pimp, like in the aisle. There, yeah. I got home, opened the bag. What the hell?
Yeah, why can't you? She didn't answer my DM.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I don't think we're going to top that. I think that's probably going to be our cue since we've kept you for an hour. This has been awesome. And I wish we could do it every day. But since we can't, please follow Kristen on the social medias that we mentioned earlier. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Go to Kristen and Chill. And Kristen, thank you for being one of those beacons. And thank you for your time. This has been awesome. This has been awesome. And one of the cool things about our tiny little podcast is we call people that we like. So we're not like going, let's get Matthew McConaughey on the phone. We got this. We call people we like. He doesn't like us, so we don't call him. But you know what I mean. Don't worry about it. We like to reach out to people we care for and we like. Yes. So thank you very much for spending time with us. We really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. See you later. Thank you so much. All right, well, that's our show. Steve, this was a fun one. We got a little bit serious, but then we got to talk about I think it was fun. Yeah, Coke and pudding came up, and things generally go well when that happens. We also want to say thank you to Kristen Carney. That was a very fun and fascinating conversation. Check out Kristen at her website, KristenCarney.com. Just Google Kristen Carney. You can check out her Twitter, which is great, and her Instagram. And don't forget, KristenandChill.com. Kristen is spelled Kristen. But that was a lot of fun. To keep the good times going, another way you can do that is to follow Speaksies on patreon.com/Speaksies. Become a supporter of Speaksies. Get to see great things like full video interviews with all of our guests, our exclusive post-game show, where again you can see what Scott and I look like and my awesome yellow shirt that I'm wearing today. And also early access to all Speaksies episodes. Finally, if you have any suggestions or topics for our show, give us a call and let us know. Leave us a message on our Google voicemail at 804-621-5803. And remember, if you leave a message, you could very well end up on our show. Yeah, and then you'll get famous. All right, Steve, Bob's your uncle? Watch out for bears, and kale is from the devil.
Speaksies.